And welcome back to This Week in the USHL, and pleasure to be joined here in our Coach's Corner tonight by Kevin Hartzell, head coach of the Sioux Falls Stampede. Kevin, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Kevin, so far a pretty good start for your Sioux Falls club, and battling in that Western Conference, never easy in terms of the competition.
Well, I'm a big fan of the league, and I'm a big fan of our West Division. When we scheduled a little differently this year for some more efficiencies within our, just mileage and travel and budgets. And so we're playing our West Division teams a little more than we normally do, and I couldn't be happier about it. I think top to bottom, the competition's so good. And, our boys come from all over the world for this competition, and this league has really got a way of teaching you what you can get by with and what you can't, because if you don't do the right things, you don't win very often. So I'm just excited. I think top to bottom, the West Division is just fantastic.
Very competitive in the early going, and I suspect it will continue. It would be, I'm sure, a tooth-and-nail battle right to the end. Just to talk a little bit about your team, you've currently got a number of guys just looking down the list that are committed to play Division I hockey. You've also got several guys that have had NHL interest, and case in point, Christian Isaacson was a pick of the Buffalo Sabres just this past spring.
Yeah, I think not just Christian. I think what you find with the league is there's a lot of players that blossom later.
Right.
Christian obviously has already been drafted, and he's a good NHL prospect, but I think you can look at Marcus Perrier, who is not drafted, but I can see him being the kind of player that he's going to go to college for several years, and if he continues to blossom, I can see him being an NHL caliber player. And doesn't, I don't think it stops with Marcus. I think that's the fun thing with the league, and the fun thing really with the USHL and really hockey in the U.S. is that players, unlike across the border in Canada, where something you better be blossoming by the time you're 20. And I think it's great for Sid Crosby's, and there's a lot of players that have benefited playing north of the border. But one of the advantages we have is not just the kids who are drafted today, but if you look at some of the boys that have been signing out, I look at some of our alumni, Benny Holmstrom, Nate Prosser. These boys have, thank goodness they got to play juniors till they're 19 or 20 and then go play college. And they're blossoming when they're 23. So I think that's really one of the strengths of what's going on in the USHL and in the American colleges.
Absolutely the case. And with your team, typical of the USHL and maybe typical to a very great extent is the mix. You talked about players coming. We talk about it every week about players coming from all over. Just taking a look at your team, it's quite a melting pot, if you will. You've got a guy, Zombo is a name that people are going to recognize. You've got the son of Rick Zombo playing in the league for you, Dominic Zombo. You've got an international flavor with Thomas Pastor from the Czech Republic. Your goaltender is from Finland. You've got a couple of guys from Minnesota. You've got a Georgia native on the team. Really, it's kind of we are the world when you're coaching the USHL to bring that whole amalgamation of styles together and to blend it, Kevin, into something that's going to be a winning formula.
Well, you bring up a great point. Last year, one of our top defensemen was from San Diego, California, and he's a freshman this year at Mass Lowell and just doing fantastic. He was freshman of the week, I know, one of the weeks for Hockey East. Our starting goaltender last year, who was one of the goalies at Northeastern University in Boston, from Florida. You mentioned we have a defenseman this year from Atlanta, Georgia. I think one of the finest players in the league is from Cincinnati, Ohio, the Mullins boy that's playing in Fargo. He's going to go to Miami of Ohio next year. And I just look where these boys come from, how hockey's grown in America. And I think part of that's been obviously the NHL influence. And you talked about Dominic Zombo, his father settled in St. Louis, and Dominic, of course, being from St. Louis. And then I think if folks could see what us general managers and coaches in the USHL are privy to seeing that come across just our emails for international players that are very interested in coming to play in the USHL. You mentioned Thomas Pastor. He was on the Czech 18-year-old national team last year, and we worked with Sabota, which most people remember Peter Sabota, a longtime NHL player. And,
absolutely.
He helped some of his Czech countrymen, funnel the right kind of players over here, and we have a goalie from Finland. So it really has an international flavor as well.
Yeah, you've been a long-time proponent of the USHL all the way back to your playing days. And I can remember my first ever contact with the USHL, covering Boston University hockey, now my 26th year doing the play-by-play. And I remember being out there in the 80s and having an opportunity to go with our associate head coach Ben Smith to see a St. Paul Vulcans game. And that was actually your old team in the USHL at that time. You might have been playing in the game that I was at, as a matter of fact.
Well, I played in my first year with the Vulcans. We were called the Midwest Junior Hockey League. That very next year, we merged with the USHL, and the teams such as the Waterloo Blackhawks and the Sioux City Musketeers. Those teams at that first year only have 6 junior age players, and the rest were senior players. And then I don't know if it transitioned over the course of 2 years or 3 years, and then it became a complete junior league. And that first year of the new USHL, I say I grew up so much because the senior players, most of them, their careers were really on, coming to an end, and they were still playing and making some money and enjoying the game. And of course, we were young, eager bucks, and we were out there playing for scholarships and playing hard. And sometimes those two mentalities didn't mix so well because we were so eager that some of the senior players took offense to our eagerness, of course. And there were some fights that reminded you really of the movie Slapshot. I mean, there was more of that in those days than people really want to believe. I think as it migrated into all juniors, I think that that part of the game, they're still fighting, of course, but I think that became a lot more controlled. But I know my second year, my last year of juniors, the first year of the USHL was something to remember for sure.
As a matter of fact, I'm just looking, and I am 100% sure that you were the coach of the Vulcans, the particular game I was at, because that was 1985-86 when I was out there with Boston University. Yeah. Exactly. Now that I've taken a look at your coaching tenure with the Vulcans.
Things changed because back then, we'd have our tryout camps, and we'd go about and somewhat, nobody even knew we were there. And nowadays, our tryout camps are visited by virtually every NHL team and all the college scouts, and it's not uncommon that some of the players that we cut already have major college scholarships. Maybe they just don't fit into the team, or for whatever reason. And of course, those things didn't happen back in those days, where if you had a scholarship player coming in, that was unheard of.
Right.
And nowadays, about a third of our teams show up with scholarships. The schools really want them in the USHL to season and you really work on their game. And then, of course, the other 2/3 are earning their scholarships, as the season goes. But back in the old days, everybody started fresh, and really nobody had a scholarship coming in.
And by the end of that experience, normally you're in a position where the entire team, or pretty close to the entire team, has earned those scholarships. It's just amazing, the numbers in the USHL, and you've seen those numbers grow exponentially as a guy who's been on the front lines of this whole process.
No question. I think we're at a point, I can't speak for every franchise, but I think our franchise, it might be one player or so every other year that's not getting a scholarship. Sometimes that maybe just didn't develop, and sometimes maybe his academics didn't come through and it just didn't work out. But it's not 100%, but it's gotten very close.
Very close to that. Kevin, one of the things that I've got to point out is the amazing record you've had in building character and turning out leaders, not just great hockey players on the ice and outstanding performers on the ice, but it's amazing. 15 of your former Stampede players are currently, not all time, are currently wearing a C or an A for their respective college teams. I mean, that's an outstanding statistic, a testament and a tribute to you and your coaching staff. And just to talk about that particular element of development that obviously you put in the forefront of your overall package in terms of coaching and in terms of regimen in the whole Stampede program. I mean, that's something that you really should be rewarded for and acknowledged.
Yeah, we're very proud of it. It's certainly been a focus. We obviously hockey, when you really cut to it, is a character sport. I mean, it's how hard you play for the person next to you, and we know all the values. As hockey people, if you want to call us hockey people, we value those things. We value teamwork and sacrifice for the guy to the lefty and the guy to the righty. And locker rooms, a good locker room is such a great place to be. And first of all, I was fortunate when I came here. When I was talking to the ownership group, I said, "Look, the only thing I'm going to promise you is a great locker room." Mm-hmm. And we have such a great ownership group, and they really buy into this character building. And so we promise, or we I don't know. I guess promise might be the right word. We promised a good locker room, and the guys really worked. But we just kept taking it a step further each year, and what we'd put our players through, what we had asked of them, and how we would, our self-study leadership, ask our players to study leadership, and certainly, every player needs to be a leader. And I don't care if you're in hockey, you're on the fire department, you're on the Navy SEAL team. When it's time for you to take charge, you got to take charge. And it's something we found some things that we think really help build that. Of course, you've got to recruit and draft the right players, but all seems to have worked really well. And we thought last year when we had 9 captains in college hockey, we thought, wow, we were really proud. And this year, it's like we're really taken aback by the numbers. And our boys know that when they go to school, that whether your team is wherever they are, whether they're struggling or they're at top of the world, your job is to go in there and help make the program better and leave it in a better condition than when you found it. And our boys buy into that, and we're really proud of it.